Hello, Faltigu Academy, Ushkabeta Ela. How nice to see you, Mr. Murphy.
And you, yeah. This has been a while, isn't it?
Welcome to IWA. Is it 7? Live 7?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't believe that it's been that long.
No.
So must have been, was it in the summer last year? Was it?
The summer, I think. Yeah, I was trying to think. I was laughing earlier because I was thinking we've probably had, since the last time we did one of these, I think we've had like 3 prime ministers, 2 first ministers. So much has changed since we last did one of these.
Well, it's just really said that because I think that I've changed as well.
You do look a wee bit different, aye.
This is my look for the spring.
Absolutely, yeah.
My new spring look.
You're looking very well.
So I'll just say who I am. So I'm Rachel MacNeill, founder of the Islay Whisky Academy, and we've got Neill Murphy here, the kinship host, and I'm based in Islay, and Mr. Murphy's based in the dear green place of Glasgow.
It's not so green today. It's more of a dear grey place today, but yeah.
Well, we're kind of the same here, Neil.
Yeah.
Rain. Oh my God.
Yeah. But still, what is it they say? Today's rain is tomorrow's whiskey.
Don't we?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
We can't complain. We shouldn't be complaining about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, were we going to just quickly see what the Islay Whisky Academy is?
Yeah.
The Islay Whisky Academy is an educational establishment based on Islay. We offer online courses and we offer residential diploma courses. And I wrote volume 1 of the online in lockdown, and it was so lovely and so easy because of the peace. And I thought that I would be able to have volume 2 written the following year, but I think when was lockdown? That was a wee while ago.
I don't know. I've lost all track of time now. Yeah, 2020 it started, wasn't it? But it started and then stopped and then started again and stopped again. It was a bit, but yeah. It's not quite as easy to get the workflow going, is it?
Well, no, because we're busy now, and in lockdown you had a kind of peace in your head, I feel. Because now it's all business as usual, kind of say. I mean, I'm not complaining.
No. Yeah, we don't necessarily want to go back to lockdown, but it's funny. I think you do sometimes find yourself almost craving that solitude that you got. You know, there was. As awful as it all was, there was a strange kind of comfort sometimes in that there was no pressure on you to go anywhere or do anything, you know. It's funny.
Remember the weather? Well, you know, when everybody was
we had
out
a really good summer. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of which, I bet you Donna's having some good weather. She's in California. Hi, Donna.
Good afternoon, Donna. You're so lucky in California. Yeah.
We've also got Mr. McShane on with us from a very wet Argyll. Yeah.
Should be in Loch Long.
Yep.
That reminds me, John, I'll need to drop your pizza off to you for your fire pit. I keep meaning to drop off some pizza to him for his fire pit so he can sit outside with his drum.
Of course. Yeah.
Do you remember, John, that time that we would, maybe this is telling tales out of school, but that we were on a Zoom, I think it was maybe after one of our Zooms, and we'd stayed on, even you had fallen off, I think, Mr. Murphy, going to your bed, and John said, I'm going to go outside to the garden and have a cigar, and I was like, fine. So I'm on the phone, and then he started knowing I could see this light shining in the darkness, this wee red light, and I was like, where are you? And he's shouting, I'm here. He's out in the dark. I couldn't see a thing. All I could see was the end of the cigar.
The voice from beyond.
It's switched on, it's working.
Oh dear. So what have we got lined up for tonight then? We are going to be talking a bit about barley, aren't we? We thought it'd be appropriate to talk a bit about barley since, you know, it's the spring. We're in that kind of season now where we're the season of growing and all that. Everything kickstarts for a new year now. So it seemed appropriate to talk a bit about barley tonight.
I should really be pouring a dram of is it the Loch sowing edition? But I'm not. I'm going to put a dram of this.
Well, I've stayed on brand a wee bit. I've got the Islay barley here, so at least it's sort of, it's got barley in the name. That's close enough.
Good for you, Neil. I've not got any of that left, I think. And I thought I would get some last week when I was looking after our guests from Panama, but I never made it. Anyway,
well, I think that's the best compliment you can give a dram is to say that you've got none left, isn't it? That shows it went down very well. This Scotch is meant to be really high ABV, not ABV, ppm, but it's very, very sweet. Hold on. When was that one out? The Scorch, was that a couple of years ago now, the Scorch one? I can't remember.
It's nice. I mean, you get the peat at the back. It's awful sweet. You get a bit of salt at the back too. I can't remember when the Scorch was out. It's fiercely charged casks, 51.7. It doesn't say the ppm. I can't remember. There was it not when you were here for a diploma? Was it not Scotch that you had in the distillery?
No.
Big, no.
When we were there in October, was it? The Hypernova one just came out.
I'm thinking of the Hypernova. So Scotch is old one then.
Yeah.
Because
that was like the heavily charged casks or something, wasn't it? The Scotch one. Yeah.
I mean, it's lovely, but it's not. You think that it's going to be. It's nothing like Hypernova. It's got nice. It's a nice way to give them peat, I think. Well, or smoke. So smoke and peat. Because I opened it for the Panama visitors. So
very nice. Yeah, well, I mean, as I said, I'm on the Bruichladdich Islay barley here. I think it's the 2013 one I've got. And their releases are always pretty solid, but I think this one is especially good this time. I don't know. It's hard to say what separates it from the other ones. Different vintages seem to be especially strong some years. And this one seems to be really good. I don't know why. I don't know what was going on.
Really interesting, Neil. Does it list what farms it is?
It does. It's got Cool, Rockside, Island. Is it Mullandry?
Mullandry,
Cruach, Dunlawset, and Sunderland Farms. Does that say?
Okay, yeah. It might be interesting, if we had to. I think it'd be quite nice to do a tasting. What you call it? A horizontal tasting. Of all the different Islay barleys, wouldn't it? Very subtle differences between them.
And do you know what I was just? It'd be really interesting to look back as well. Like if there are particular years that you really like. It would be interesting to look back at what the weather was like that year. Was it a particularly good summer? Was it a particularly wet summer? And then I wonder if your tastes are particularly aligned to, when it's a particularly wet summer, that's when they get the flavours that I really like. Or, that would be quite interesting to look back on.
That's a brilliant segue into what we're talking about tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah. See, this is not my first time.
Well done, McMurphy. Because we're going to be talking about biodynamic barley and organic barley, and we're going to talk a bit about barley futures and barley planting. So I'm just going to quickly say a few things about planting. So I was speaking to James Brown of Octomore Farm. So James obviously grows for Bruichladdich. So it's just really to make people think about stuff and to do with the farming, because you can't say, well, we're going to plant on the 14th of March. You just can't. You've got to think of everything in context, and you've got to have your soil prepared. So you in the winter, your soil gets cold and it closes down. It becomes tighter, and obviously, if you're trying to plant with seeds in that, it's not going to happen. So what you want to do is you want the soil to have warmed up to a temperature that is sufficiently hospitable for your wee seeds when you put them in the ground. And in Canada, I read a lovely thing today, Neil, right? And they plant in their seeds, not for barley, but for other things, when a certain tree, when its leaves are the same size as a squirrel's ear.
Oh, very nice.
That's how you know. That's how you know.
Yeah.
Because the leaves have grown sufficiently, but to be about the size of the squirrel's ear, right? And that when the Canada, it's in Canada this time, and it's when the Canada geese have returned or are starting to return, then they know that when these two things happen, the soil will start to warm up. So in Islay, it's the same. I mean, it's the same all over the world, but we'll have certain things that are little markers, right? But over here, we've also got to balance that against. So in the winter here, you know yourself, loads of gales, loads of rain, so the ground gets waterlogged, right? So you're not wanting to go in with machinery. Maybe in the days of a horse and cart, it would have been different, but you're not wanting to go in with a heavy machinery, and you're going to be breaking up the ground, making a mess of the ground. Do you know what I mean? You're going to be destroying it. So you've got to wait until that kind of dries. But then you can't leave that for too long, right? Because if you're too late in putting in your barley, then it's going to take longer before it's ready. And then you're going to have to be worrying about weather in the autumn.
It's going to be getting exposed to the bad weather in the autumn then as well.
So it's a very fine juggling act. You've got to just really take the windows that you can get, and you've got to really think about all these things. It's a very subtle thing.
Absolutely, yeah. But I love things like, like you're saying there about, the geese coming back or whatever. That's a thing that we've sort of, everybody else, especially people who live in cities and stuff, we've lost touch with that kind of connection with nature, where you see the seasons through wildlife and things like that. It's something that farmers obviously still very much use and rely on,
Cool.
Yeah, but it's a lot of people are too far removed from that now,
So this is why whiskey's so good, because through whiskey, we can connect people, and that's what I was really interested. Well, that's what we're really interested in doing in the diploma. We try and connect people to the land and to the elements of the land, also through Courting the Drum, the online course. But that's very important to me in the academy, is to connect people.
That's right.
So just a quick run through of just the basic things that you have to do. So you've got to plough the barley, plough the field. So what you're doing is you're breaking up the soil so that because it's flat and compacted, so you plough it, right? But when you plough it, it breaks up into big chunks and clumps, so that is no use. So what you want to do then is you harrow it or till it, which is like pulling through like combs through it to break up the clumps and soften it, because you want to make it kind of fluffy and accessible for the seed to go in. So they've got to do all these things and prepare. So it's preparation is vitally important. So that ties us in really well, Neil, with a biodynamic, because biodynamic is so it's completely immersed in the nature of the thing, right? So see for like say if we talk about Waterford, right? Because Waterford Distillery make biodynamic, and that's one I kind of know most about. So they have a magic potion called 500, like potion 500, right? So what happens, how that is made, right, is you take cow horns and they're compacted with manure, right? And then these are buried like over a season, over a winter or something like that. And what happens is what's in the horns, because the horns is grown out of the beasts, right? So what's in the horns, like all the I don't think nutrients is the right word. I don't know what you would call it, but that all goes into the manure, right? And it makes it richer and gives it more. You could, I mean, it's all can be chemically analysed, which we're not going to do tonight, but that can be done, right? So that happens over the winter or over a period of time. Then what they do is they dig it up, and then that becomes like a normal a normal manure spray that is sprayed onto the fields, right?
Yeah.
So, but see, when you're talking about biodynamic, right? People have adopted Rudolf Steiner's way, right? Because Rudolf Steiner was a great thinker and wanting to help natural growth and things like that, right? Okay, but you don't need to use what he says. What they're trying to do is make you aware of what you could use for your own environment, okay? So you can also use fish, right? So and you can also use seaweed, because what you want to do is you want to nurture the soil again. You can also use other plants, right? You can grow a different plant over the winter, and then you can actually kind of mulch that back in, so that it's taken down the goodness from the sun through photosynthesis into its leaves, and it's grown there. And then what you can do is you can mulch that kind of back into the soil. So if you want to do biodynamic properly, you really want to think about your absolute specific environment, what's right for you. And why people think it's airy-fairy, and it's absolutely not, because it's just physics. Which is airy-fairy and magic. So the moon influences the water in the land. Well, everybody knows that. The tide goes in and out by the moon, right? So the moon influences the water and the soil. So if you've a full moon overhead of you, because of the energy of the moon pulling the tides, it pulls the water and the soil as well. So it means that your soil is moist and ready and not dried out, so that when you plant seeds, they're more likely to germinate in the soil. So
yeah, that's fascinating.
There's nothing airy-fairy about that. It's just because the parameters of most people's thinking doesn't go far enough out.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I can see, but because it you know, when you hear of people maybe, you know, farming by the moon and things like that, you know, it does sound a bit spaced out kind of thing. But all you have to do is open your mind a bit and listen to what they're saying and explaining the reasons, and you kind of think, oh, okay, I kind of see that, you know. It's really interesting what you were saying about like the, you know, natural products in the ground and stuff, because obviously I looked into sort of organic barley a bit as well. And what I find really interesting is we think of these as new things, you know, organic as a new thing, but when they're not new, it's a return to the old way of doing things. Actually, you know, this is how things would have been done a long time ago. And one of the things I read about with organic barley was you know, they might need to sort of fertilize the soil a bit, but obviously they can't put man-made fertilizer in, otherwise it wouldn't be organic. But one of the things they quite often do is add clover, apparently, and clover's really good at pulling nitrogen out of the atmosphere and turning it into a sort of gas in the soil, which the plants can then feed off of and use to grow, you know. But it's a way of adding a natural product there, so I get it's completely organic because you're not putting any chemicals on or anything, but you're still getting the same thing. You're still achieving the same goal without resorting to chemical use. You know, it's really interesting.
So it's people paying more attention, really, Neil, I think, isn't it? And another thing about the biodynamic is that now it's one of the farmers from Waterford. His name is John, I think. I don't want to say the wrong guy. Well, wait a minute, John. I don't know his surname, but I'm sure it's John. And what he says is that because people are so engaged and thinking about their land, right, that they build up a far more caring relationship which leads to you then being more connected to your farm, more connected to the earth. It leads to you being slowed down in the way you think about things, kind of like the way we were in COVID, maybe more paying attention to wildlife and things like that. So biodynamic, it's the same concept as for me. When I was reading about it, I was thinking that's like a terroir, because or in Gaelic, anam and yerin, soul of the land, soul, anam, soul, and yerin of the land, because you can't have terroir without the human engagement, because if it's not, then it's just a wild thing growing by itself. So you have to, for the concept to exist, the human has to be involved, which is the same as the biodynamic concept. And then because you're involved, you're part of the circle. You're not removed or doesn't. So therefore, you to take care, pay more attention, and then that filters out further, and you start to take more caring about other things, maybe dolphins, or save the tigers, or do you know what I mean?
It's connecting you to things again, isn't it? It's exactly what we were saying earlier. It's reconnecting you to things, which is what we hope to achieve through whiskey as well. Feeling part of something a bit bigger than, it's not that a farmer's not just there to let the land do its thing and then stop it when he needs to stop it. They've got to play an active role in it,
and be in relationship.
Yeah.
And a giving back.
Yes.
Not just a taking, because the land is not a commodity.
Exactly.
The land is, like a being.
Yes.
So it's to make people think differently. So I think it's a great thing. So who's all doing it? So Waterford's doing it. Bruichladdich did it. Do MacNeill do organic?
They definitely. I think they're 100% organic, if I remember right.
Was it a list somewhere? Did I make a list?
I mean, I know Springbank do a lot of local barley stuff. Ben Romach. I think Ben Romach were the first to do organic, if I remember right. I think they were. Yeah, I'm sure I read that. I think they were 2000, maybe. I think Ben Romach were the first distilled using organic barley, and I think Bruichladdich first did it in 2003. So Ben Romach were 3 years before them and trying organic. It's not like Ben Romach don't use exclusively organic or anything.
No, and neither do Bruichladdich. No. But at least they're attempting it, because the thing is, it's very difficult to get people in business to support you. I mean, actually, maybe Bruichladdich with a mindset and Ben Romach with a mindset, it might be shareholders might not like it, because it's very low compared to forcing on with false chemicals, right? The natural thing that an acre gives you, I think it's like 1 ton, 1 ton organic, whereas like normal forcing on will be 2 tons. And because of the kind of the way business goes, it's always big is better, which I don't agree with.
No, absolutely. I mean, the benefits obviously are huge as well. I mean, from a business point of view, it's understandable why people falter a little, But I was reading a lot about organic barley, and it was talking about, it has lower emissions because it uses less energy. It lowers the risk of pollution in soils and waterways because you're not putting the chemicals in. Oh, sorry.
It froze. Was it just me? It froze forward.
I don't know. No, I don't know. My internet can be a wee bit patchy sometimes, so it may have been at my end.
What did you say there about emissions?
Yeah, so it uses, obviously, has lower emissions when you're using organic or when you're growing organic, because it uses less energy to grow. You lower the risk of pollution in the soils and the waterways because you're not using the chemicals, obviously. It also apparently captures and stores more carbon in the ground as well, which again is kind of touches on what you were saying. Really, we need to think about looking after the land, and our soil, apparently, I read, stores more carbon than the atmosphere, plants and forests combined. So healthy soil is absolutely crucial. It absorbs the carbon dioxide, draws it down through the trees and the plants, and it stores it in the ground. So if we are constantly churning up and abusing the ground and filling it with chemicals
making the ground, forcing the ground, and the ground's poor, and we're only making it produce. Then it's not able to take the carbon.
It's not taking it in, and even worse, it could be seeping it back out again. You know, I think I wrote down that organic soil stores nearly 2 tons more of carbon per football pitch sized area. So I mean, it's fairly significant.
Substantial. Yeah.
I also read, now this is obviously, there's an element of kind of pie in the sky stuff with this, but I read a thing where somebody said if all of Europe's farmland was to follow organic principles, then agricultural emissions would drop by 40 to 50% by 2050. So, you know, if everybody was to switch over to organic, then the emissions would drop by up to 50%, you know, from the agriculture
because
sector.
It's not just in the farming. It's like you think of the emissions that it takes to make these chemicals.
Making the chemicals, exactly, yeah.
In the past, we never used to use chemicals. It was hard work. And
absolutely.
It's only since the war that people have started using chemicals, because the chemicals were used to make bombs, and the people still wanted, the bad people still wanted to make money, so they were like, well, we can't make any more bombs. What we do, I know, we'll put it into the soil and we'll tell folk it's good for the soil.
So
obviously, that crap.
I even, you know, I was reading a thing as well that said, like, you know, that even the plants tend to be healthier. You know, the actual barley is healthier because and tends to have more nutrients and things in it, because it's forced to do it all itself, right? So it becomes a stronger, healthier plant because it's got to work on its own. Whereas the other ones, all the fertilizers and all the fake stuff does all the work for them, you know. So they grow up slightly weaker than the organic stuff.
That's right, Neil. And I don't know if I've said this in this talk before, but I've certainly said it maybe in the class, that horns of tups, you know, rams.
So
like my daddy and my uncle made shepherd's cooks. In fact, this is here.
Oh yeah.
So that's how I did when I was wee, and then this one when I wasn't just quite so wee. Anyway, what they used to have to do was they used to have to boil these horns, right, to soften them so that they could carve, like, see how that one's got the thistle carved out of it, right? And I mean, for me, I just had like a wee sheep's horn, but you know, they would have a big fancy things. But see, latterly, there was a farmer at Kintuar near like our bag, right? And he said to me, Rachel, see now, he says he made shepherd's cooks, and he says, I find it really difficult to get horns, because what happens is with all the hormones that are pumped into the beasts, the horns are huge, right? Big fat, but they've got nothing inside.
Okay.
Humble. And that's what the barley's like. Do you know what I mean? It's forced on, but it's got no body inside. So
John's put in a really interesting comment there. In the 20th century, yield increased by 50% due to development of higher yield barley. And that, obviously, that is the problem, you know, when we come to talk about organic. And, you know, it's all very well saying, we could cut emissions by 50% if everybody just did this thing. But yield is the problem, isn't it? And therein is the thing for the farmers and stuff. If they are getting less at the other end, then people might not, you know, it then becomes a problem for them because people aren't buying as much. The distillers don't want less yield. They want more yield. Most distillers, anyway. They want more yield. They don't want less, you know.
Which brings us into talking about futures. I mean, we can go back to, but so it's very interesting, because what it is really, it's grain futures. It's just when the distillers lock in a price against the barley, right? So in the time before COVID, the farmers were told to hold on to 20% of their contracted amounts, because the distilleries had reduced in production just at COVID there, right? So they didn't need as much barley, but the the futures were that the barley had been sold at that price, but I'm not saying who said to them that they weren't, that they had to hold on to an extra 20% instead of like, you know, they couldn't sell it to the distillery companies weren't taking it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But they made a big fuss about that, and the Farmers Union helped them and things like that. Because what happens is they get a guaranteed price regardless of the weather. So, see, the figures I could only find were way back in 2010, right? So they were getting £30 a ton, say.
Right.
But on the open, so they were selling like 70% to somebody at that price, but that was guaranteed, right?
Right. Yeah.
But the extra 30% in the market that year was selling for 150.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean, so it's a big gamble. You're guaranteed, but the distilling companies make sure that the price is low.
Yeah.
And this is why they let them down coming up when COVID was on, because they were meant to take all that stock, but they were like that, oh no, backing out of the deal. But then it was all fixed. But that's why you know, futures. It's a handcuff security for farmers, I would say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's quite a low price, really.
Yeah. It reduces the risk of a dreadful season, but it also hampers like a great season, you know, like it doesn't quite add up all the time. It's nice to have that guarantee, because at least then you can run your business off the idea of a certain amount of income coming in.
Yes, that's right.
You know, but it can also mean you might lose out if you've had a particularly good year.
Yes, that's right. So, for example, and price rise, the way prices go up and down, it's very interesting. You can actually go onto the internet and you can look and see, you know, a metric ton. So a metric ton is 1,000 kilograms, which that we've got to see metric ton, because there's two different ways of describing a ton, and I think there's 6 grams of a difference or something like that. So you've got to say a metric ton. So in 1992 it was $77, right? And in 2023, so what's that? 30 years later, it's $182.
Right.
So per metric ton. So it's quite interesting, really. That's barley. You know, I mean, grain and wheat are different. And I mean, that's malting barley. Because there's barley used for other purposes as well. And just a quick thing of great interest, because the obvious word is a ton, right? So you think about a mash tun, right? That's why it's called a ton, because it comes from the French equivalent, which was the French ton of wine, and it was 954 litres of a big wine cask. And that was the wine ton, 900, and then it came from that word ton.
Okay.
It comes from, because it is a ton, you know. So it's weight of 954 litres. So that's liquid and weight. Marion.
Yeah, that's cool, isn't it?
Oh, it's cool, isn't it? Also, the average seeds per kilogram are 25,000. That's seeds for sowing. Everybody knows a wee barley thing is 78 millimeters in length, and it's like the shape of a rugby ball, sort of.
Right.
It's not round, but it's like so. What other little facts? We were going to talk about maltsters.
Yep. Do you know, I was just thinking that myself, actually, because obviously it raises some really interesting questions at the side of the maltster as well, doesn't it? Where somebody says, okay, I want organic, but I only want this small amount of organic. And, you know, for a maltster who's dealing with all different kinds of barley varieties coming in from all over the place, that must offer some problems for them, you would think, you know.
Because they're used to on such high numbers. Well, two people who do small amounts that you can get is crisp.
Right.
So crisp, they do. I think you can do 1 ton bags, 25 kg bags, right, from crisp. and also crafty maltsters.
Yep.
They do small amounts, but I think everybody else, Simpson's, Burt Malts, and Baird, they need maybe a larger.
A bit bigger, yeah. It's funny because I was reading something about, obviously, if you even think about it, for something to be fully, apparently maltsters can be like, they get certified by the Organic Food Federation or something, so they can actually get themselves certified to say that they can produce, proper organic malted barley. But they, sorry, my dog's just burst into the room here.
I was wondering,
You might hear him drinking. You might hear him drinking his water bowl in the back here. It's not me. So, but one of the things I was thinking, it's, if you do say you've just been doing a batch of, say, non-organic, and then you've got to do a batch of organic through the maltster, there must be a risk of contamination then, and how do you prevent any of the non-organic getting into the organic, and apparently one of the
more time consuming.
Absolutely,
The same way that when they put stuff through the stills, going a brichladi, you have to be very precise.
If you're swapping between peated and unpeated, you've got to make sure everything's cleaned properly. But apparently one of the things they do is they sometimes process through a small amount of organic barley that will just be sort of mixed in with the old non-organic barley. Because by pushing that through, it clears out any of the non-organic stuff. Right. And then they can put through the proper batch of organic after that. And they know for a fact then that everything's been removed, But again, that's got to put costs up as well, If you're at the distillery end, if anything that takes the maltster longer, you imagine is going to put costs up for the distiller,
Well, remember that we said James, like 1 ton per acre for organic. So, do you know what I mean? If you were using a wee bit of that to put through, it's going to cost a lot more in the maltsters than if you're just doing. But the thing is, we need to stop looking at the world through the lens of money if we want to save it.
Yeah, I think that
the big thing about life.
That's something I think. I mean, Bruichladdich probably aren't one of the cheapest whiskies out there, for example. But I think people buy into what they are doing, and that's sort of what it needs. It needs people to say, okay, it might cost a wee bit more to get the organic one, but, maybe it's worth paying a wee bit more when we know that it's going to have a benefit to all of us, Maybe
you're not going to have a hangover the next day, are you?
Well, exactly.
Don't. I don't mean you've got to drink the whole bottle. No. Drink responsibly at all times.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So I've just seen that we've been joined by Andre all the way from Luxembourg.
Oh, good evening, Hello, Andre. Nice to have you with us. Lovely.
So it's a fascinating topic. It really is, and I think it's something we could probably talk about all night long. But
I love it. Another thing that let's just quickly see is also people that are thinking about food miles and not buying their barley. So the industry in Scotland is trying to. The SWA said they are trying to do. I think it's between 60 and 80% of barley from Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
I think I read that today. Now that I wrote it down, so I've got that many notes. I read that much stuff. It was so interesting. Scottish. Hold on. The industry is committed to supporting Scottish farmers to help them support 90% of the barley requirements from Scotland.
That's really good.
I mean, they're committed to supporting them to do that. I'm impressed with that. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good move. I think I like that.
And also, there's a distillery. Wait a minute now, Fettercairn, whose malted barley has to be sourced from 200 local farmers in a 50-mile radius. That's what they make it be. So I like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Obviously, Bruichladdich, Isle of Barley, that's brilliant for that.
Yeah.
And I've got down here Glenlivet and Aberlour, so they must try and source local as well.
Right.
And obviously,
Yeah.
you look at Waterford. I mean, Waterford are amazing. Just everybody is.
Yeah.
How many is it? 34? I can't remember the number now. Is it 34?
Oh God, aye, something like that. Yeah.
I have it written down, or it might even be more than that.
Yeah.
Everybody around about them. I just think it's wonderful what they're doing. I mean,
No.
I would say that they're really quite out there.
Yeah, I mean it's great. I like that talk. I think I've heard Bruichladdich say that a lot. You know, where they are sort of rebuilding the links between farmer and distiller. You know, which again has been so lost over the years. You know, everything was sort of, when barley's been brought in from all over Europe and just wherever a corporation can get it for the cheapest. You know, it's broken that cycle a little. You know, whereas the distiller. The distiller should be on first name terms with the person that's growing barley for them. You
Absolutely.
know,
And it's nice
they
for
should
us
have a relationship with those people. You know, that's how it should.
And it's nice for us to see who's grown it. You know, because they're trying to do it in food as well. Like, you know, this was grown in such and such a place. So it's brilliant for us to see, you know, on the website, they do features and things like that. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm aware of the time. What else will we go?
Well, I think I've ran out of all the stuff I had scribbled down about barley anyway. That's about the extent of my knowledge.
So Rudolf Steiner, I wanted people to think about how it's in relation to your location. So I'm not saying this was for barley, right? But it's just to think about using what's in your own location, right? So if you've not got cows to put the manure into to fertilize your ground, what could you use? So red deer, a place that had a lot of red deer, they used red deer bladders that were put in the sun, and they put yarrow plant blossoms in them, because that worked with the whatever was in the red deer. Maybe the red deer have eaten them in when they were living.
Right.
So it's really been really aware of your location and paying attention to all the animals and flora and fauna, and using that to feed, and then feed you out of that. I find it so interesting. So the idea that the land itself is conscious, and the different elements of the ecosystem, such as plants, soil, microorganisms, and waterways, all come together to create a sentient, of which the farmer becomes part of, is at the heart of biodynamic agriculture. Yeah, I just thought that was wonderful. So are we moving swiftly on? Are we leaving barley behind?
Yes, I think we've covered just about everything there, haven't we? It's a fascinating topic, and as I said, I'm sure we could talk about this all night, you know, because there's so many different aspects to it. We've only just scratched the surface. We haven't even mentioned Bruichladdich. Obviously, have just brought out their very first Islay whiskey, you know, which again I think is really fascinating and something I'd love to talk about in a bit more detail. But I think we'll maybe save that for another evening, you know.
It's like if they're squeaking, that's not me. That's
no,
that's a funny squeaker. The pets love to be on the TV.
Oh no, they're just attention seekers, aren't they?
Yes.
So I think we were going to do something a wee bit different for tonight, just to kind of round things off, weren't we? We were going to talk about sort of further reading. But I like this because it doesn't necessarily need to be reading. I think maybe each time we do one of these streams, we might refer you to something else that we've read or watched or learned about, because hopefully it might be something that you've not heard of, and it might enhance your journey as well as it has for us. Tonight we're doing books, and we've each got a book that we sort of have enjoyed of late, and we thought we'd like to share with you. Will I go first, Rachel, or do you want to? Right. So this probably isn't a secret. The one I've picked probably isn't a secret to many people. I've got the A Sense of Place, which is by Dave Broom, who won't be a stranger to many people that are watching this video. I'm sure a lot of people will know all about Dave Broom's work. He is a well-known whiskey writer. He's been around for it seems an age. Ever since I got into whiskey, Dave Broom's been one of the sort of prominent voices on it. I've got many of his books. In fact, I think the first book I ever got about whiskey was a Dave Broom book. But this one in particular is of interest, I think, because it sort of follows a lot of the themes that the Academy likes to talk about, I think. And it also touches on themes. I don't know if anybody ever saw, Dave Broom did a documentary film called The Amber Light.
Yes,
and
this
book,
it's a great film. Yeah.
It's a great wee film, yeah. And this book sort of follows on with quite a lot of the same themes. He, in The Amber Light, he talked with like musicians and craftsmen and women of all different sort of kinds, relating whiskey to the way other crafts are made and things. And this sort of does the same thing. It follows the author he does like a tour of Scotland from Orkney to Islay, but via Speyside and the Western Highlands and the Outer Hebrides. But along the way, he's exploring whiskey as a cultural product, how it's inspired by the people and the places that make it, and how it reflects the people and the places that make it. But he's obviously, Dave's a very accomplished writer, and it's very evocative, like there's sort of lovely descriptive, flowery descriptions about the places that he's visiting and stuff, and it really captures the feeling of being there, But yeah, he deviates from whiskey as well. There's plenty of talk of whiskey, but he also he visits somebody making Harris Tweed, for example. He visits archaeologists. He speaks with James Brown at Octomore. It's a really good read. And as I say, I think it appealed to me so much because we talk a lot about Scotch in context, and we've talked a lot tonight about how whiskey relates to the land, the earth, and how it's all part of the one thing. And I think Dave's onto something similar here, how it's all the culture, the history, the land, the place, the people, they all come together to produce this drink, and I think, like the Academy, the book is trying to give you a sort of deeper understanding of all of that, and it's also a really damn good read.
Be a good person to come and
I think so, yeah.
Do a wee book thing for us.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I sent him a message and I said, it was after the Amber Light, Neil.
Yeah.
And I said, I could have written the script for the Amber Light, and you could have written Corking the Dram, because
absolutely.
I haven't read A Sense of Place, but I'm looking forward to doing so.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. And just the one other thing, because it reminded me, just I posted a video in our kinship group the other day because it sort of twigged with a lot of this. It was a video from a Scottish musician called Laura Wilkie. She plays for a band called the Canaris Quintet, among many others. Yes. She plays with a lot of other bands and stuff as well, and solo projects. But this wee video was her following a sort of, it was like an exercise for people who want to improve their composing. And the task that she was set was to compose a piece of music that's based on the written word, right? So the rhythm of the written word. And what Laura picked was a Gaelic poem. And she then had to try and compose a piece of music based on the sort of rhythm and the flow of the words in the Gaelic poem. And I thought that was beautiful, because there's a reason Scottish folk music, Scottish traditional music sounds and flows the way it does. And that's because that's how the language flowed and sounded,
Yeah.
So
and the landscape.
And so it's one thing inspiring another, one thing reflecting another. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about with whiskey here, how the sense of place, the people, the place, the land, the history, the culture all go into making this product. It's all reflected in one another. It's just fascinating stuff, that, to me. But anyway,
Well, that I think that's a good recommendation for a sense of place, and I think maybe we should say to Dave to come.
Definitely, yeah. John's just thrown in that Dave's a good lad because he's a Partick Thistle supporter.
We can forgive people many things, John, if they're Partick Thistle supporters.
Nobody's perfect.
Well, mine is absolutely brilliant in a different way.
Yep.
So mine is called Sea Spray and Whiskey by Norman Freeman. And it's a book that the whiskey people don't really know about because it's a sea voyage, right? And it's a true story. And it's about a young lad who was training up for the Merchant Navy, and he went on a journey, an amazing journey, and they went to South America, and he joined the boat, and they had so much whiskey on board, and it's all the reasons how when they reached the port that they were meant to reach, there wasn't so much whiskey on board, and it was not their fault.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely brilliant because I can just see it. You know, he describes the characters. He described, the stories. I said to my friend, Margaret Mary, her boy's in the Merchant Navy, her young boy, he's just training with an officer. And I said, Margaret Mary, don't read that book.
Yeah. Well, my father-in-law is sorry.
Oh, it's just hilarious. And you know, it's just a record of the thing. So it's like it's not like a story. It's a record, but the way he writes it, it's engaging. So you're there. It's like somebody blethering telling a good story. You know,
yes,
but these things that happen, they're not made up. And because of that, you're just and it's so kind of tutor that you can recognize it. I mean, I can recognize the ways and the things, even though it's happening on the other side of the world. You know, you can recognize. So it's very, very Scottish feeling about it. You know, and our men and boys that become part of that and travel over the world and how they engage with everybody. I mean, it's just brilliant. So Sea Spray and Whiskey is a brilliant.
I think that sounds brilliant. Actually, I'm going to pick up a copy of that myself.
Oh, you'll be laughing, absolutely laughing. And the thing is, I was telling my gardener was in the Merchant Navy, right? And I was telling him about the book, and I was very enthusiastic about it. And I went up the stairs, and I was like, "Oh, you'll be able to relate to this," I was saying to him. And he didn't want to know anything about it. And then I was thinking afterwards, I wonder if he was on the ship.
Yeah, he doesn't need to read about it. He was there.
He knows too many folk. He probably knows who they all are.
It's my father-in-law is an ex-Merchant Navy man, and his stories are phenomenal. You know, so I can imagine that this would be worth reading. He out of many stories, some of which I couldn't possibly broadcast, he does have a story once about meeting Oliver Reed in a port somewhere, and Oliver Reed ending up back on the ship with them at one point as well. So plenty of stories to tell.
The sea is always because the people are adventurous. They're not so hidebound. So more things happen because the characters are extreme, and also they're more likely to take risks and be,
definitely.
So that's our two books. But I just wanted to quickly say, in case we don't have time, because as you know what we're like on the time scale, we are having an Islay Whisky Academy open day on Thursday, the 1st of June in Portnahaven Hall, like last year. So that'll be from 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, with a series of events. The events will able to be bought online, but people can come and there'll be things happening on the day that folk can engage with. Also during the week, I'm going to be holding events. We're going to hold a geology walk. So a geology and whiskey walk. So that'll be really interesting about water and whiskey and the rocks, and also probably a tree tasting where we link the types of trees to the whiskey. I think I can't remember what else, but they're through the week there'll be things. People have asked about doing the dinner again. We might do our own dinner. I don't know, but we'll see. Because the dinner last year was a big success. Folks said it was the favourite whiskey tasting dinner of the festival. So that was a big, I was happy about that. So I don't know how we're going to, but there'll be lots happening for the festival, and we will advertise it, and it'll be on the website, and it'll be on the Faish website also.
Yeah, and if the website should be on the screen there. There we go. There's the website there.
Well done.
And if anybody wants to ask any questions or something, you can email info@islawwhiskeyacademy.scot as well. But this stuff will all be coming out on the social medias and stuff, I suppose, as it gets sort of cemented in place and stuff. And as Rachel said, the Faish website will have further information as well. Well, I think that just about wraps us up for tonight then, doesn't it? So I have to say I have thoroughly enjoyed this. It's been great doing this again. So we'll need to make it a kind of regular thing again.
Yeah, with regularity, yes, we will.
Yeah.
It's like the Islay Whisky Club. I run it with regularity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the regularity. I don't know what way you would do that.
I suppose it works both ways, really.
Anyway, it's very nice to see you, Mr. Murphy, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Absolutely, thank you for joining us, everybody, and thanks obviously to anybody who chooses to watch this again at a later date. If you leave any wee comments in the YouTube video, we will try and get back to you. Or obviously come and follow the Islay Whisky Academy Facebook page, or Twitter, or TikTok, or Instagram. If you have any messages or anything, just give us a wee shout on there as well. What's this? Donna's saying every time I don't attend the festival, I miss wonderful events.
Next time you're here, Donna, we can organise something special for you and the friends you've got. Get a personal event organised.
Lovely. Cheers, John. Thank you.
Cheers, John.
Okay, so I think that's just about us then.
Well, Slanchava, everybody, have a great Easter, because this we will not have one before Easter.
No. Great stuff. Well, oikiva.
Oikiva.